And now, here's Mike Muse with the political news.
So let's get right to it and meet the candidates.
That completes the opening statements.
We're going to get right to it.
On Sway in the Morning.
All right. Mike Muse is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday, so got a lot to get to, man.
It's always a fun day on a Monday.
I trust your weekend went well?
It did.
Okay, good.
Good weekend,
Any highlights?
Highlights.
If not, don't force it.
Yeah, no. Caught up with some friends. Had a bunch of friends in town for University of Michigan. It's a big reunion supporting our friend, our playwright Dominic Russo's play on Broadway.
That's a force. All right, cool. All right. Did y'all win?
No.
Basketball. I'm talking about the crew that came in to support our friend whose play is on Broadway right now.
But did y'all win in basketball?
No.
Again, the crew came in from Michigan to support our friend.
Mike Muse will be very silent in my sports report, citizens.
Who's winning on Broadway? It's all good. We're still seated number 2, so we good.
On Broadway.
We still seated number 2 at the beach.
All right.
I'm watching your sports report. Don't worry.
Okay, so you brought up what took place over in New Zealand. It was a mass massacre that took place, and this has been all over the news cycle. Even while we were in South by Southwest, one of the artists came on stage and talked about it at the end of the show. So where are we now as a nation with this, Mike Muse?
Yeah, man. So listen, as you guys know, on Friday, the massacre happened with two mosques, as Sway mentioned, at Christchurch. We now know that the murderer is Brenton Tarrant. He's a 28-year-old personal trainer, from Australia. But what's interesting about this, Sway, is his manifesto that he actually wrote.
How many people did he actually kill, Mike Muse?
50. 50 have been killed and 50 have been wounded. To be very specific, 42 people were killed at the Central Christchurch Al Noor Mosque and 7 at the Linwood Mosque, and 1 was pronounced dead at the hospital.
Okay.
And then 50 were actually wounded when it came to this. New Zealand, if you think about it, is one of the most safest countries in the world. You don't really hear any problems coming from New Zealand. New Zealand's one of those just beautiful countries. They don't bother nobody. They're known for their beautiful terrain, and the geographical location of it is perfect. The waters, the ocean, the people are really great.
Yeah.
So you really don't hear anything regarding this. And so this is when terror strikes. And it seems like terror is just striking now across the globe in places you wouldn't even expect it.
They're attacking safe places, but I think it's strategic, though.
It's strategic, and it also has people on edge, too, as well.
Yeah.
Not to bring University of Michigan into it, but even on Saturday, there was a scare that there was a shooter walking around on the campus, and everyone's alert, and they shut the campus down. And what it turned out to be was it was just these young teenage girls were popping balloons in a building. But just how much people are on edge, on alert, that you automatically think the worst, right? And so now we're in this place now in our society where even in the safe spaces, we still don't always feel as safe anymore. And really that is the objective of terrorism. Right? It really is to make you feel that kind of way. But it's really bringing up this whole notion now of what we're seeing, xenophobia, that's really striking into our masses. And then you're really saying about white nationalism is really what this manifesto was written about. And he wrote it really interesting. It was a Q&A to himself. So basically he asked his own questions, and then he answered the questions that he asked. Based upon that, we were able to get insight into who this person is, this murderer, this terrorist is. And he goes on to make a case by saying, quote, are you a supporter of Donald Trump? Now, this is him asking himself this question.
Okay.
He goes on to say, as a symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose, sure. As a policymaker and leader, dear God, no. He goes on to say, I chose firearms for the effect that it would have on social discourse, the extra media coverage they would provide, and the effect it could have on politics of the United States, and thereby the political situation of the world. Really bringing in America to this conversation, really bringing in what some say President Trump represents in the sense of giving clearance to white nationalism, right, and giving support to white nationalism, being empathetic to the white nationalist movement. And then here he is saying he wants to infuse and I guess moderate a discourse in American politics on our ideology that comes to that.
Okay.
He goes on to say that he hopes to create conflict between the two ideologies of the United States on the ownership of firearms in order to further the social, cultural, political, and racial divide, thus ensuring the death of the melting pot pipe dream. He goes on even further to say, asking to himself, were you taught violence and extremism by video games, music, literature, and cinema? He says, yes, through Spiral, the Dragon 3 taught me ethno-nationalism. Fortnite trained me to be a killer and to floss on the corpses of my enemies. And so this man goes on to say a bunch of other vile things, and even talks to other white nationalists in terms of how they should be. He says they should, quote, they should paint, they should write, they should sing, they should dance, they should recite poetry, hell, even meme. And he believes memes and the use of social media is a great way to advance this white nationalist perspective. The larger narrative of this is that words matter. I talk about this all the time. Like when you don't check white nationalism at the gate, when you give clearance to it, when you give empathy to it, when you say there's good people on both sides of it, like this is the result of what happened. So this individual is over in New Zealand causing massacres and terrorism and murder, thinking about the propaganda that's happening here in the United States. So we have to be mindful and check our leaders out the gate when these white nationalist things arise.
What was President Trump's response to this massacre that took place in New Zealand?
He actually, you can hear from him himself. He spoke over the weekend about this as well.
I don't really. I think it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems. I guess if you look at what happened in New Zealand, perhaps that's a case. I don't know enough about it yet. They're just learning about the person and the people involved. But it's certainly a terrible thing, terrible thing.
So he basically doesn't believe, he says, I don't really think that white nationalism is a threat around the world. What's interesting about that, though, is that here this man, a murderer, a terrorist, committed a massacre, invoked President Trump and invoked his name, and yet President Trump didn't denounce or speak to that. One would think if my name is being used in a mass murder, that one would want to question or denounce that. But that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. We got Sean on the line from Illinois. Sean, good morning. How are you?
Sean.
Hey, good morning, Sway. Good morning, Heather B. Good morning, Mike Muse.
What up, Sean?
What are your thoughts on this?
I think this is going to be a pattern. I'm in a lot of gun groups. I'm a black guy in a gun groups. And I feel like this is going to be a bigger thing. Any white gun groups I am in, this is how they speak. I mean, I don't know how to explain this, but I was raised around mostly white people.
Okay.
And, you know, when they talk to you and when you're around black white people, they'll be like, oh, man, you're one of the good ones. This is how they speak. But when you start to listen to their real conversations, they really feel this way. They really have that fear that they will be replaced. They feel retaliation. They understand slavery. They understand all the stuff that they've done in the past. And when they think of this stuff, they go, man, we got to get them before they get us. And this is really how and that's what the manifesto said. If you read that manifesto, he was speaking about how he feels like they're going to come and get us. They're going to have retaliation. We have to keep our populations white. First of all, they didn't start out white. But he feels like they earned what they stole. And this is how a lot of white people feel. I believe this with all my heart.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Sean, because you're right in the, you're like you said, you're in these groups, so you're privy to information and conversation that your average American probably is not going to hear.
And most black people do not understand, especially black people who don't have white friends. I mean, until Trayvon Martin happened, all my friends were white. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
After that situation happened, and I spoke to all my white friends, like, man, this is dangerous. What boy won't run from something like this? Well, why did he run? What's that? What? Why he got his hood on? What? And so after that, I just had to change my circle.
Yeah.
But those thoughts, those ideas, what they say, this is how they feel. I don't care what white person call in. They're going to lie to you about this shit. This is how majority of them feel. They are afraid of retaliation, period.
Sean, thank you. Shit, man, you're a citizen, Sean.
Sway in the morning.
And that's why you saying, and that's why we believe these public officials have to denounce this white nationalist rhetoric.
Yeah, and that's what I talk about xenophobia. Xenophobia is just fear of other, right? And so when you fear of other, you feel like something is being taken away from you and you're threatened by a demographic. This is what you see.
Kevin, what are your thoughts? He's in South Carolina.
Hey,
Kev, what up? You're in South Carolina.
What's going on?
What's
going on, Sway in the morning? How y'all doing?
What up, Kevin?
Well, real quick, Kev, what are your quick thoughts? Go ahead.
Man, my thoughts is, man, this stuff been going on in America. The white people been killing people and mass murderers, and they're going to continue to do it. They ain't scared. They just want America to be all white, like they used to be. That's what they want.
America was never all white, Kev.
Well, I ain't gonna say all right, but you know they rule it. They think they over everything. So you know they the ones over politics and everything. So
okay, Kev, I appreciate you. You're a citizen.
Sway in the morning.
All right. What kind of political backlash, or if any, what are other people saying in Congress or in politics right now about this, and how are they reacting to President Trump?
Well, everybody's denouncing it. You know,
Yeah.
everyone's denouncing xenophobia. Everyone's denouncing Islamophobia.
Okay.
People are saying that we need to be more vigilant about how we speak about this. There really isn't anything to say about Donald Trump in terms of what congressional members should say, because his words kind of speak for themselves. And then you kind of have this, whatever he says, whatever you feel, whether or not he should be more double down on it, or that's kind of up to individual congresspersons to say that and how they feel about it. But one will have to wonder if your name was invoked when it comes to a mass murder and terrorism. One would be more vigilant about removing my name from that storyline and from that narrative.
Okay, Mike Muse is here, Political News. President Trump had to issue his first veto after the border emergency was rejected. Talk about that right now. Why is that important? I mean, I kept hearing the emphasis on the president is finally going to have to issue his first veto. Why is that important to note?
It's important because, citizens, just to bring you up to speed, as you guys know, the government was shut down over the border wall. They were able to bring the government back open underneath this bipartisan agreement that they would give President Trump some money in order to fund some portion of the wall. President Trump was not happy about that once he opened the government back up. So what he did was he declared a national emergency in order to use resources to fund more billions of dollars in order to fund for this wall. Congress felt that he went above his constitutional responsibilities and norms and is using national emergencies as a way to circumvent the Congress and to say he's upset when he didn't get as much money as Congress authored, that he would just go ahead and declare a national emergency and override them, essentially. So then what the House proposed under Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat Speaker of the House, was a measure to revoke essentially the National Declaration of Emergency. What was interesting about that is the Senate then took it up, and there was 12 Republicans that crossed over to also be in support of going against this national emergency, which then made President Trump do a veto when it comes to that. The significance of that is that those 12 Republican senators sent a message and saying that they believe that President Trump went above and beyond his constitutional authority to declare a national emergency, basically by saying when you don't get your way, you don't get enough money from Congress, you can't circumvent the system and then create a national emergency when it comes to that. But where we are right now is we don't know if there's going to be enough Republican senators to actually override the veto, because how legislation works, citizens, is that if Congress passes a bill, they can put it on the president's desk to either sign or to veto. The president can either sign it and put it into law, or he can veto it. If they veto it, it goes back down to Congress, and then Congress can then override the veto if they so choose to. And so as of right now, we just don't know if there's enough votes on the Republican side to veto, but those 12, it makes the conversation really interesting. But even if not those 12, there are currently lawsuits that are in action to stop this national emergency from being put into place. And so this is something we're going to see taken all the way to the Supreme Court. Either way.
Either way. We got a whole lot of folks that's calling in. If we bring up topics you want to comment, definitely call in. I was watching this thing with former Vice President Biden recently, where he was addressing an audience, and he had a Freudian slip up when he said, people on the left, progressive, really progressive lefters, if you will.
The new left.
The new left. Okay, the new left should understand that I've had some of the most progressive policies in my history for anybody running for president. And then the whole crowd erupted because it was almost like he was announcing he's running for president. Then he backed up and said, that ever ran for president. But there are more people coming into the fold on the Democratic side, right?
Absolutely. So we're all just waiting, and I say we, just as Americans, are just waiting to see who is going to be left to come in. And Vice President Biden is the last holdout. And so we don't know. It's all suspect that he will jump into the race. But what he's really defining and outlining is what I've been talking about on the show for the last couple of months, is that where is a place for Biden? Is there a place for the moderate Democrats here in this new 2020 election cycle? Because the Democrats are moving so far over to the left. And one big name that's jumped in right now is Beto O'Rourke. As we know, Beto O'Rourke ran for Senate against Republican incumbent Ted Cruz. He lost, but Beto was able to capture like America's attention. And here is his announcement video, and here's how it sounded.
Share with you that I'm running to serve you as the next president of the United States of America. This is a defining moment of truth for this country and for every single one of us. The challenges that we face right now, the interconnected crises in our economy, our democracy, and our climate have never been greater, and they will either consume us or they will afford us the greatest opportunity to unleash the genius of the United States of America. In other words, this moment of peril produces perhaps the greatest moment of promise for this country and for everyone inside of it.
His voice is different.
Male Siri.
A male Siri? Is that what
He sounds creepy.
But
Beto, turn the lights on.
He's rolled out to great fanfare. Vanity Fair did a cover story of him to go along with his announcement. He believes that was going to make him different is that immigration will be at the center of this election cycle, he believes. And he believes that he's the only candidate who comes from that Texas-U.S.-Mexican border. So it'll be really interesting to see where he's at. But let me tell you, he is a force. And let me tell you the reason why. In 24 hours, he was able to raise $6.1 million in fundraising.
In one day?
Again, I repeat, $6.1 million in 24 hours after his announcement.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, Senator Bernie Sanders, when he announced in the first 24 hours, he raised 5.9. But think about that. Bernie Sanders has been around. He's already ran in a presidential election already. This is Beto's first time really on the national scene, and he's outperformed him by $6.1 million. To get that more context, the next person who had the highest fundraising totals was Kamala Harris. She came in at 1.5 in 24 hours.
Okay, I guess
so
we
if
see
you
who-
think about 6.1 mil in 24 hours versus 1.5, and then Senator Klobuchar, she raised 1 million in 48 hours. Why is that significant? That shows a number of support that you have in small dollar increments, $25 donations, $50 donations. Those are small donors who are invested into your campaign. So those are the people who's going to be his base and his core and his support, and those are very strong totals. One thing to say, people are asking about Beto's policy. I don't know where he stands with policies. I'm going to put it out there. I don't think this election cycle is about policy. We saw what happened with Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton was an expert on policy. She can run circles around anyone, Republican or Democrat. And we see where that got her, right? It's not about policy. It's about personality. And I think this is what people are going to be clinging to.
Make sure you got good hair whenever you're on stage. Make sure it's a good hair day.
Yeah. Always, man.
You got to have a good hair day.
Clapback game got to be on point.
Yeah, man. Your retaliation got to be banging.
Yes.
Especially going against President Trump.
Yeah, you know, we're going to keep this conversation going on offline. You can hit up Mike Muse directly. I know President Trump was in the news also for some of the things he said about the late Senator McCain.
He can't let it go, man.
Yeah.
I don't understand his obsession with Senator McCain, a fellow Republican who's not even here with us, who has this incredible legacy. It just, for some reason, he just can't let it go.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on all of this? You know, hit up Mike Muse directly at
I am Mike Muse, MUSSAME on Twitter and Instagram.
Have the B.
Sway.
I hit up Steve Cohen yesterday.
Did you really?
We were watching the PGA Players Championship together.
No, I would have interrupted that phone call because the excitement is in the air about bracketology. We're going to talk, Steve. We're going to talk.
We got it all.
Sports up next.